Hello, my darlings. Mother Raven here, waiting just to tell you more fantastical and wondrous tales. The Waxing. A number of letters that were found a few years ago in an old home in the middle of the Midwest. Dear Aunt Lily, it's me, Evelyn. My dear Jim has just come home from the war a month ago. Victory Day was a long while ago, but it has taken time to get our boys home. We moved out of my mother's house where we had been staying and got our own sweet little house finally. It wasn't a new one, like some are having built by the country for the GIs, but I like it just fine. Jim has got his old job back at the grocer's helping old man Swenson, and I've started to make our house a home, though at times I miss the camaraderie of the munitions factory I used to work at. I am so hopeful for the future. Jim and I have always talked about having kids, a whole slew of them. I think we might wait a bit, and just until Jim gets settled. He seems a tad moody, though I know he loves me as much as he did the day we married. I will write again next week. All my love, Evelyn. Dear Aunt Lily, it's me, Evelyn. I had to run down to the Five and Dime and buy some more paper to type on. Mrs. White, who runs the store, seems a bit sad again. Her son John still hasn't been heard from. He was in the Pacific Theater. My Jim was stationed in England for most of the war. She asked about Jim, but he doesn't like to talk about the war, even little things. Because of that, I didn't ask him about anything that had happened. He will tell me when he's ready, so Mom says. I looked for our wedding photographs to show you, but I haven't found them yet. I did find a strange photograph of Jim during the war. He loves to take photographs, and he's really quite good at it. Here, I'll tape the picture to the paper. Anyway, there seems to be something odd in the picture, and it reminds me of what happened last night. Jim has had terrible nightmares most nights. I think most men came home with shell shock of one type or another. My Jim is no different. Last night was a bit different, and it scared me near to death. I woke up to Jim grabbing my neck and laughing in a deep voice like a maniac. It wasn't terribly hard, and I broke free, but he kept looking at me in a horrible way and laughing. It didn't look or sound like my husband at all. Then he started talking in a strange language. It wasn't German or French, I know that much. And at the end, he kept saying something that sounded like "sow and." Finally, he fell back asleep and looked like my Jim again. I didn't think I'd sleep again after that. But about an hour before dawn, I did drift off. Then the dream began. It was so strong and clear to me. I was in a forest and running. I was afraid and being stalked by something hunting me. It was a man, and I would catch glimpses of him, but more than that, I could feel his presence and his emotions. He was enjoying it, but he had a feeling he was, a god. He wasn't really malicious, but I felt like he was going to kill me anyway, eventually. You see, he was amazing looking. I'd never saw him below the waist, but he had no shirt on, and wow. Now the weirdest thing. He had a huge set of what looked like elk horns on his head. Not tied on they were his. Despite my fear, I wanted to be with him. Oh my, I shouldn't even think these things, let alone tell or write them down. But if anyone understands, you would understand, Aunt Lily, right? You know more about all kinds of things no one has heard of. Yours, Evelyn Olson, Mrs. My dear Aunt Lily, I thank you again for sticking with me and listening to my story. Your kind replies have helped me a great deal, as things have gotten stranger here. Near mid-September, almost the autumnal equinox. You know, I've always loved the stars and kept track of that. Last night I had more dreams, but they were more confused. I was lying on a rock and looking up at the sky through dappled sunlight in a wood. I was peaceful and happy, Then I was a rabbit being chased by a wolf or a dog among knotted roots and musty leafy mold. I found acorns in my slippers this morning. We have no oaks around for miles and miles. You would probably have to drive all day to find some. The neighbor's black lab has been barking all morning long at the wood, putting me on edge. All the more reason I wandered down to the library after finishing up bottling some pears this morning. I couldn't find the book you recommended, The God of Witches, anywhere. We have a small library, so it was a long shot. I really didn't want to ask. Who knows what looks the old librarian would give me? She always looks positively Victorian with her lace collars halfway up her neck. Jim showed up from work with a package for me. He said it was to make up for the way he had been acting in the nightmares. He had bought me a beautiful silk dress in a lovely deep green. He told me to go get dressed, and we walked down to the diner. As I was getting ready, he read the letter he got today from England. After the waitress took our orders, I thought it would be fine to ask him about it. He had sent me letters during the war and told me a bit about the places he was stationed. He couldn't tell me exactly where in England, of course, but he said there were deep, beautiful forests, ruins, and even standing stones. There was a small, very quaint village nearby. Jim became friends with many villagers, and especially a retired professor that lived there. When I asked Jim about the letter, he laughed. "That's quite a story," he replied. He told me that a lot of old customs had survived there. It was interesting to watch. Maypoles and Morris dancers. He said that all the young men had been killed in the war by the last spring celebration, and his professor friend had asked him to stand in on a thing or two. I asked what that was, but he kind of shrugged and looked away, something about being like a prom king or something. But Aunt Lily, he blushed. Jim never blushes. I may be a woman from a small town, but I am not naive in the ways of the world. The war was a long, emotional time. People have needs. I know this. I'm practical and let that lie. Jim went on to say that his friend, Professor Alistair, was letting him know a family from a remote Scottish isle had moved to the village with a young man of about 17, and that his duties would no longer be resting on his head and heart, as the young man knew the rights. But, however, that nature and the forces may take time to acknowledge this. The professor then thanked him profusely and apologized for any sacrifices his help may cause. Along with the letter was a certified check for £300. I told Jim he had to send the money back. He assured me the professor was a certified kook, but a kind and rich one. Jim said he would be insulted if we gave it back, so I reluctantly agreed to keep it. It was a beautiful night, still warmish with all the stars in heaven singing out above. Jim was so much like the man I'd married again. Weird things aside, maybe things will get better now. Don't you think? In love and hope, Evelyn. Thank you, my darlings, for staying to listen to my stories. I'll meet you again next time under the trees for more tales.